Hello everybody, welcome to Sonic Talk episode 679, recording today, what is it, August the 4th, the 4th of August. May the 4th be with, well, it's not May at all, is it? Anyway, you know what I'm saying. This is a music technology podcast. We talk about all things to do with production, instrumentation, mixing, software, synthesizers, electronic music, all of that kind of stuff, performance, anything that kind of takes our fancy within the whole sphere of the music realm. So do join us. You're watching this on YouTube. We stream this live on YouTube every day, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Twitch, and also on Facebook Live. In fact, we've also got Patreon where you can see the pre-show, and we also post all our videos up there without any ads, so you can watch up there. There's also audio stems and patches and exclusive video content, so if you want to join us, just head up there to patreon.com/Sonicstate, and we'll be happy to accommodate you. We're also on Discord and all these other places. You can find the audio podcast on the Amazon device, the Google device, Spotify, iTunes, everywhere that you need to. So I want to say thank you very much. Also, before I get into introducing our guests, no show next week because I'm going to be away. I'm going camping, or not camping, sort of glamping. I'm not exactly sure it is. I think basically it's a glorified pig shed with a couple of beds in it for 4 nights in Cornwall. So I'm looking forward to getting away. But thank you very much for bearing with me. We may have a pre-record there. I'm filming something tomorrow, and we'll see how it turns out. But that will be that. Anyway, so let's say hello to our guests. So we'll start with Mr. Yoad Nevo, who's over there in Nevo Sound in his studios in London. How are you, Yoad? You well?
I'm very well, thanks.
Excellent.
Glad to be here as always.
Yoad, of course, is a producer, engineer, songwriter, many also developer for Waves. In fact, if you haven't already seen, you should definitely check out the Sonic 001 album on Bandcamp, which has a track by Yoad Nevo and Nina Smith, Waiting for You, which we all agree is a good one. And also there's one from our other guest, Dominic. But I will get onto that in a sec. So you were saying in the pre-show that you were setting up your Atmos system, so you're nearly there. How long? It sounds like quite a lot of work to get it set up, right?
It's quite a lengthy process because I had to drill in the concrete without disturbing all the acoustics, the kind of hung ceiling and all that. So that was one thing, and the other thing is to calibrate the speakers and the angles and the sweet spot and the cones and all that. So but I know this room so well, and the speakers are actually really good. So although I'm used to the ATCs and the ProAx as near fields, but so the Genelecs are going to replace the ProAx and the Quested I used to have, they sound really. At the moment, I have the LCR installed already, and they sound amazing.
What Genelecs are you going for? Are you going for the smaller ones?
It's 8040B. It's 8040B, and the satellites are 8030C. So the 8040B is quite, it's very powerful. It has a really good.
Oh yeah. They're like the ones I've got 1020s. I can't even remember what these are, but they're very old. They're the square ones, and the generation before they rounded them off.
Kind of. I think that the equivalent used to be the 1030.
Maybe that's
or maybe the 1031. I think that's the equivalent to the 8040, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, but it's a formidable speaker. They're really heavy and they're really sturdy, and they sound great. So,
nice. Nice. Well, I look forward to. Maybe one day I can come up and listen to it because I haven't really experienced Atmos, and I would like to experience in your room because I know pretty much it's going to be bang on.
Yeah, that'll be great. We can go again to the Eagle.
Yeah, Well, I'm actually coming up towards the end of August, so maybe I can we can arrange.
Yeah, give me a shout, definitely.
All right, will do. Anyway, thanks for joining us. We also have Mr. Dominic Hawken there, who's in his studios, his home studios, with the lovely Matrix Brute behind him. Mr. Wiggly, of course, maker of fine plugins. If you check out the URL in his lower third. Also, you've been doing a bunch of live streams yourself and lots of guests. Had Mr. Kent Spong on. You got another one for this Sunday?
Yes, we've got Jennifer Stevenson. I'm trying to find people who aren't particularly well known and normal people like myself to come on and just talk about anything really. But we've had the odd superstar on as well with Kent Spong. I would class him in the superstar category just because he seems to know everyone in the industry, and he repairs synths, if anyone's not aware.
He's the man.
Chat. He's the man. If you spend £20,000 on a Jupiter 8 or whatever, then Kent will be the person that everyone will recommend that gets inside and checks it out for you. So he was great. So Sunday live stream at 7 p.m. and I've just started putting up some more recorded streams as well with my new SP404 I've been playing with. But yeah, if you fancy joining, Kent ended up in a Darth Vader costume, answering quiz questions from my 9-year-old daughter, like what's the name of my elephant and what's your favorite hat. So it's worth a watch. Jennifer's amazing though. She's only been kind of into, I suppose, electronic music a few years, and she's already been booked for gigs and stuff which got kiboshed by COVID. But it'd be really interesting to find out how she's kind of jump started her career, and it'd be really interesting to find out about that. So, and also if anyone's watching that wants to come on and just talk about their favorite synth or anything really, just drop me a line at mrwiggly.co.uk and come on. We don't we'll take anyone, and then never book up more than a week in advance. So come and have a chat.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that. So traditionally it's the summer, we don't get a lot of news. There is a bit, but it gives us the opportunity to sort of have a bit more long-form discussion and a bit more sort of free-form. Not that most of our things aren't already pretty free-form anyway, but let's start with this one I liked. This is from a chap called One Cut Coin, and it was posted by MIDI Error. I never even heard of this. This is what is it? It's called...
The MIDI File Boom Box.
The MIDI File Boom Box. It's the Yamaha MDP10 player. So you put a floppy disk in. I think this is playing the theme from Doom by Mick Gordon. So ready? It's going to start going in a minute. And you can mute individual tracks. I mean, this just illustrates for me how amazing MIDI is and how many uses it has had and continues to have even these days. I mean, I'm using it all the time. Anyway, I mean, it was a bit of fun, but it actually, the interesting part really was kind of, I've never seen one of these, but just the amount of applications this had. I'm trying to think of any other technology that's specifically to music tech that has such longevity and so many purposes. But perhaps, I don't know, Yoad, I'm sure, I mean, I know you're Mr. MIDI, you love MIDI like me. I don't know, have you started thinking about upgrading to OSC and all of the things that provides yet, or are you still very much in the MIDI vibe? And have you got any MIDI players, general MIDI players?
Actually, I know a guy who used to listen to classical music as MIDI files through his Kawai keyboard for his pleasure.
Wow.
So it can, so it can, those MIDI files, I mean, I think that no matter how technology will advance, they will still use the same kick drum, the same RX11 kick drums on all MIDI file, sound generators. It's amazing how no matter what you hear, it's that.
That's it. Well, you think about that, the longevity of an auto-assigned general MIDI voice. That's a really interesting idea. So you could follow it right through from the very beginning when it was first embedded on the Yamaha chips.
Yeah, I mean, you can actually store the metadata for within the MIDI file. I guess it's not too complicated to even do if you have the right player that can accept this information, that you can transmit, you can store parameters or actually the very sound itself and presets and stuff like that.
Well, would it be MIDI sample stump standard, wouldn't it? It would be, I'd imagine, which, as we know...
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
SDS.
Well, people still use that. I mean, it's still used it's still used to in some form. There was something I was using it on recently, where it basically said, I think the Novation circuit tracks, moving samples up and down to that via the web interface is all done via the MIDI sample dump standard, which is hard to believe.
Yeah, well, as long as you don't count on the speed of transmission of actual MIDI through MIDI cables, which I remember uploading and downloading stuff to the Atari. It just used to take forever to transfer like one sample from the S1000 or something like that. It used to take ages.
Yeah. Well, there was a Steinberg sample editor, wasn't there?
Yeah, Avalon.
That's right. I remember doing that once. I was in a studio. I can't remember what it was. It was a residential studio, and we decided we want to mess around with the kick. And I started the sample dump sending to whatever it was. I mean, it was probably an S330 or something, and we had to go and have supper, and it was only a bass drum.
Yeah. It's I would say it's slightly slower than Splice.
Oh yeah, Splice.
Yeah.
The one thing.
What do you think? Yeah. General MIDI. There are some fond moments.
Yeah. Well, just quickly on the sample. The first thing I wrote was for Akai, which was they brought out an SO1, which is a very simple sampler with kind of one big long sample that you could chop up, and I wrote an editor for that on the Atari, which squirted the big long sample backwards and forwards through MIDI, and it was, I think it had about a mega memory or something, and it was fine. It used it okay, and it allowed you to edit and stuff. And Avalon was just like the ultimate version of that, I remember. But yeah, MIDI's the thing. The general MIDI standard, I think, could be revived, because you've got MIDI, which is ubiquitous. The general MIDI basically mapped out 128 sounds across 128 patches, so you're guaranteed to have, a piano on one and an electric piano on two, or whatever that mapping is, including a whole set of drums, where the kick drum is and the snare drum. But the sounds don't need to stay the same. They just have to be replaced. So I reckon if you use some really funky big sounds and some proper big memory, a nice big sort of 16 meg piano or 16 gig piano, or however you want to go, and then start listening to some of these MIDI sound files, I think it could be quite interesting. Really.
I've got an idea for a product there, Dom. It's the General MIDI Revoicer.
Yes. Exactly.
Because I said I was looking at the M1 Mac, because I'd sort of started a little musical sketch, and I thought, am I going to be able to finish this? I need something to kind of demonstrate the power of some of these UHI plugins. So I thought, I'll go and download some MIDI files that are of classical compositions. What could possibly go wrong? And I went to various sites and I did that, and I downloaded and I just dropped that. I loaded them into Logic, and they came up, and it basically, because this was a fresh install, Logic sort of said, I need to go and get some content for, because you've got a string track. Right. So already, Apple are already participating in this concept of general MIDI substitution. So their sounds, I guess many DAWs do the same thing.
And you should have the Spitfire Lab sounds for all the strings. You can have some real kick-ass live drum sounds in there, and literally you could build an enormous memory-wise general MIDI standard as a basis. And then I think probably the orchestral ones will be the ones that work best, to be honest, because anything with drums could be so diverse, for anything from a trap thing to a rock thing to a whatever. But generally with the MIDI stuff for orchestra, you kind of know what the violins and stuff should sound like.
Yeah, if it's called oboe and it's legato, then
exactly.
It needs to be
and it's always in the same place. Yeah. The only other things I could think of now, the obvious one is digital audio, right? In terms of changing the industry and knocking it on its head, the minute someone started breaking audio files up into tiny little slices, then all of a sudden it just exploded, and you could do so much more stuff with it. So for me, that was when the Akai samplers came out. But obviously Fairlights were out there before that, and to me that was the other game changer. I've got an echo going on. I don't know if Yoad's turned up his monitors somewhere.
I'm not sure. Maybe it's an Atmos, or it's an Atmos echo. I don't know. That could be.
It's one of his Genelecs kicking off in the background. But yeah, so when GarageBand started auto tuning and time stretching stuff automatically, and kind of I lost all the work with going around with my Akai S1000 having to doing it with knobs and dials. That was a bit of a game changer, that you could just drag a sample into something and suddenly it would be at the right pitch and the right timing and so on. That was equivalent to MIDI, I think, to me, in terms of a game changer.
Well, I wonder also, like you said, the slicing. I mean, Rex files sort of stopped because that spawned the Spectrasonic Stylus RMX and other flavors, auto slicing and many things that you could create your own. So I suppose that I'm just wondering if, that sort of level of longevity, I mean, it's kind of, maybe General MIDI will, even though it's called MIDI, that voicing standard will outlive the actual, it will go on even further probably. Because there will be...
There's nothing in history like that's remained like MIDI, as far as I'm aware, as this long, unchanged, fundamentally working as well as it did when it started. Clearly it's not great for transferring samples over and stuff, but they really didn't have to change the format. They got it right. I can't think of it. I did rack my brains, and I can't think of anything that in any industry that's lasted this long and been so helpful and so useful and been able to be kind of ported onto USB and stuff. It's an amazing thing for those guys to have not only come up with the format, but come up with the standard for actually connecting this thing together, because they've got it's got little light pipes in there. There's a little like an LED inside the MIDI device that disconnects the MIDI cable between keyboards, so you don't get any earth hums. It's an opto isolator. That's what I'm thinking of.
That's probably why we've got issues with the speed, because obviously there's only a certain, the speed
that doesn't help.
Brief, but it's the cadence, I suppose, of the light opening.
Exactly, and there's a limit to the length of the cables, but you don't hear anyone complaining of earth loops via MIDI cables, but you do with USB and mains and everything else. So to be that forward thinking back then is just amazing. Really good.
I don't know. I can't think anything else you can think of that's had that sort of level of, I can't.
Just to say that I agree with what Dom says, but we have to remember that the bandwidth that a USB cable has to deal with is thousands of times more than a MIDI cable, and therefore it's much more bound to suffer from earth and from ground and RF signals. So if there's so much going on in a USB cable and the pairs and this and the MIDI is it's quite simple. It's just 3 pins, 3 wires that transmit so much stuff like CSEX and all that. It's a remarkable format.
I suppose we could argue that actually TCP, Ethernet Internet transport, is probably as influential and as long as a similar longevity. So maybe you could argue that probably, but again, it's a transport protocol, isn't it? I mean, it's interesting that's the kind of measure.
TCP/IP has a this is going to be another geek one if we're on, isn't it? It has a checksum. So when you send a bit of information via TCP/IP, it waits to make sure it's been received correctly. So it's slower. UDP, which is the other way, just is like MIDI. It just sends a data. If you've missed it, it's not going to send it again. So TCP/IP is more reliable, slightly slower. MIDI and UDP are literally, are you listening? Because I'm sending.
Here it comes.
Enjoy
it's
yourself.
The hose pipe effect.
So for anything useful,
New Ginger, GNU Ninja, God, that's hard to say, in the chat room says General MIDI was demoted. It's now Lance Corporal MIDI, which I thought was a great game. Worth mentioning. Wait a minute. Where did that come from?
Sorry, I just remembered
why haven't I got one of those? What's going on there? Wait a minute.
I forgot my button's still wired up from Sunday. So you've got a badum tish.
Have you got that? So hold on. Have you got an SP404 on that? Is that what's going on?
No, it's a Stream Deck, and it comes with the Stream Deck. So those buttons, you can wire them up to sound effects that come straight out. So you don't want to hear them all, but it's We do
okay.
this quiz, so I've got
Stop everything. I need to. What I need to do now is completely update and rework the production system, because we used to have. Remember, we used to have the tumbleweed whenever there was an uncomfortable silence, or I'd maybe introduced a topic that nobody had anything to say on. Which the most excellent Howard Scarr actually did the sound design for that. I must dig that out somewhere. I mean, fortunately, we don't need it so much these days. But yeah, I'm glad. Which is
no tumbleweed.
Badum tish though, definitely something that.
Yeah,
needs to
you
be.
can get your Stream Deck and you can have it switch your camera angles. So I think I've.
Yeah.
I can switch mine, obviously, but also you can add things. So I've got and an elephant, which is all you really need for a live show, to be honest.
I would say so. I would think, a hooter of some sort. Anyway, that's rather irrelevant. But let's break up the mirth with a message from our friends over at Modal Electronics. Yeah, the good old Cobalt8 recently had a new firmware update. This is innovative 8-voice extended virtual analog synth in a beautiful blue oscillator with, I think, more 36, 38, 39 algorithms now, morphable 4-pole ladder filter, 29 endless encoders for real-time control, internal sequencer and arpeggiator, great MPE support for expression, a modal app for Mac, Windows, iOS, Android and VST3 AU. Lots of patches available. If you want to find out more, go to bit.ly/get_modal. We thank them for their support of the show. Much appreciated. Right. Okay. Well, the MIDI file boom box was great fun. So yeah, we'll stick with that. And also, the other thing was MTV just turned 40. This was on CDM, and the first 2 hours of MTV was I'll play enough of it so that we don't get busted. But this is the very first hour. Obviously, somebody recorded this on a video, so we'll just here it comes.
Redundant sense sequencer. T-minus 27 seconds. We have gone.
I don't know if we're going to have a 20 seconds. This is how they did it.
Start. T-minus 20 seconds and counting.
But this another piece of technology
15,
and formatting that kind of changed the industry
13,
very much so. But and a good old 4/3 there.
10, 9, 8,
So
7.
let's see.
6,
I'll pause
5,
that in a sec.
4. We've gone for main engine start. We have main engine start.
What's the first one? The first video that was on, and I didn't realise. I thought it was
Ladies and gentlemen, rock
Dire
and roll.
Straits,
Yeah, Money for Nothing or something.
but it's not.
Yeah.
It is. Come on. I thought this was going to be over quicker.
It's about now, I think.
Okay. Oh, bloody hell.
By the
They're
way,
milking
there's
the
a link
intro.
to the elephant sample that
Here we
Tom
go.
used.
So,
Diddly-brong.
it was, in fact, Video Killed the Radio Star was the first one, which I suppose is very apt. MTV, though, I don't know. I don't know about you, Dom. I went and did an MTV shoot somewhere in London. I think we were interviewed for something back when I was in a sort of popular beat combo. And I just remember it being like the pinnacle. It was so exciting because it was like the biggest deal ever, because it was global, really, wasn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
even though we were probably only being, going to a few people, it made such a massive difference to the whole of the pop industry, having that level of platform. I suppose in many ways it was kind of like what streaming has done for, in terms of change. I don't know if it's necessarily made things better. That's arguable, and one could argue that maybe MTV wasn't either. But I don't know. Were you ever on MTV? Did you ever? I mean, your videos,
No,
but did you ever make it
kind of backstage?
physically?
Yeah, no, my voice has been on it, and I've been around when things were going on. I mean, it was so exciting. You can't imagine when you've really. I think back then you got maybe 3 channels. I don't know if Channel 4 was out. Was it 81 that it came out? So, I mean, all of a sudden, everything was kind of bright and shiny and kind of pop video. And this thing, because it was global as well, just felt exciting and completely changed the music industry. So suddenly all your artist advances were being spent on shiny videos. But there was, I mean, it also coincided with the kind of Duran Durans and the stylish pop coming through, and probably contributed contributed to it a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah,
the projection of the image,
Yeah, exactly. The image became everything, and they really did spend stupid amounts of money. So I know artists working at the time going, "You spent how much on a video?" That's ultimately it's their money being spent. I remember talking to the guys from Massive Attack, and they were saying we've stopped all the videos. We're not interested. We've made one for Unfinished Sympathy, but we're doing it with one camera shots and stuff because we're getting these budgets that are just ridiculous. And they were really astute guys actually, and have remained to be obviously till this day, that they were like going, we don't want to be spending our money on shiny pop videos that everyone gets excited about.
Well, they did one for they did Teardrop, and they did the one with, they have done other big ones.
They have, subsequently they have, but this was really early on, and
right.
It was almost like you don't want a video, the anti kind of thing. And I'm sure they made the cash later to make them properly, but they were I just remember them sitting there going, I can't believe we're going to spend this amount of money. But it was a real game changer. And it's interesting what kind of survived looking good. Video Killed the Radio Star is still a great song, but that video actually looks all right. And
yeah, it's really interestingly done, where the things where they kind of showing Jeff Downes' keys, and then they move up to the drum hit, which is on a TV being broadcast. It's quite
it's
quite
aged really, really well.
Yeah.
The other one that looks brilliant is Talking Heads Once in a Lifetime. Is on there, and I mean that's a pretty iconic video. I didn't realize it was Tony Basil who did the choreography on that, and she made her own tunes later as well. But that never ages. But a lot of the other stuff, as you'd expect, kind of like effects for effects' sake and whatever. But yeah, those two just really stood out to me as iconic videos, really.
I know, Yoad, did you were you exposed to MTV at an early age? Because in many countries it didn't actually get. I mean, we didn't get it in the UK. The only time you could get it really was if you were in a hotel, or some venues had it piped in, because it was the birth of sort of cable or satellite, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was the same in Israel as well. You could get it in restaurants or hotels or places like that. I don't remember when there was like proper cable. Maybe 83, 84, something like that, or maybe like, I don't remember. But yeah, I mean, it was there was some good music on it at the time as well, some like proper pop, and I think that David Bowie Let's Dance came out, or was it 82 or 3? Maybe,
Scary Monsters probably
the whole kind of era is a bit of a blur. Yeah, it was great, and the Dire Straits video.
Did you ever get to go to any of the MTV studios in London? Because there were big MTV studios in London, weren't there?
Yeah, Camden.
Yeah,
in Camden.
Yeah.
I've been there a couple of times, but not on screen.
Right.
Unfortunately, but I'm used to being behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes.
That's fine.
Well, I mean, I didn't want to make it too much of a nostalgia, but it's amazing that it's 40 years old, and now that seems, I mean, it is a long time ago. I mean, it is, essentially a lifetime ago, but yeah, just remember the excitement about it. I'm just trying to think what else there is. I suppose now, the equivalent of being, because we don't get Top of the Pops, I guess the equivalent is being kind of featured on somebody's massive YouTube channel, or some kind of heavily sponsored, where you might get to be put on MS, one of the big American networks where your video's played, or the chat shows. I mean, those are the sort of only real big global exposure or big national exposure places that you can get to. But this was, just thought it was an interesting article. If you go over to CDM Link, there's the Buggles. In fact, I interviewed both Jeff and I didn't get a chance to talk to Trevor, but I interviewed Jeff at Psalm just before it shut, where they were rehearsing for some Buggles gigs. We've got it somewhere. I must dig that out, because it was a fun. He wasn't particularly chatty, I'll have to say. So it was a little bit light on. He was a bit sullen and not really that interested. But I guess when you've done as much PR as he has, talking to some whippersnapper with a crap camera is probably not where you thought you'd be many years later. But hey ho. Okay, well, I thought I'd throw that one in there. Let's have another one. This is yes, I think we could just about get this one in. So this is Retrosounds. Wait a minute. Which one is it? There it is. Sorry, wrong video. So this is Retrosound. He's done a cover of Das Boot, which was a very atmospheric. German film about submarine commanders. And I was watching this and I was thinking, oh, there's not enough reverb on it. And I was thinking, oh, this isn't how I remember it. I remember it being more synthy. But this is great. So he's done it on the Polysix, he's multi-tracked it. Retrosound's got a great channel if you want to check that out. I found this on a good old Matrix synth. You can tell it's only got 6 voices because none of them are hanging over. That's why it needs the reverb. This was good, but then there's the original, and I was thinking, yeah, okay, let's say this is all going to be really synthy, and it's really not at all. It's massively stringy.
No, that's right.
And in my memory, it wasn't anything like this. Great melody. This is by Klaus Doldinger, who's 81. He was a jazz saxophonist, and he did a bunch of other films as well. Anyway, I suppose the thing that I brought this up really was, sort of classic themes. This was also incidentally 1981, so the same time as MTV started. How bizarre is that? That's just a complete fluke. Sometimes the memory of what it was and what it was are very, very different, aren't they? It's quite curious, that.
Yeah, Das Boot is a classic. I worked with Alphaville as a very young man. Back then, and they had a big song in the 80s called Big in Japan, but I worked post that with them, and we did off the back of that, did a remix of Das Boot for a band called U96, I think. And talking of things that don't age well, they did a techno, it's called a techno version at the time of Das Boot, which was very big across Europe and hasn't aged very well. But I did a mix of that back then, which is when I first heard it, because it's a massive film, particularly in Germany, which is where Alphaville was from, and I was working in Berlin back then. And yeah, those strings are incredible. But I know it well because of that. I knew it was all stringy. But the other classical piece of music, which I think is just stunning, is the Barber's Adagio for strings, and William Orbit did a version
in a classical piece.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then a guy called Ferry Corsten did a remix of it, which to me is one of the best kind of dance epic anthems. If anyone wants to see it, have a look on YouTube. There's a Transmission Festival with Ferry Corsten and Adagio for strings, and the whole place is just electric, and everyone's just like this in the audience, and with everything exploding. It's just fabulous. And often you can find a little amazing kind of classical hook like that just totally lifts the atmosphere. And it's really nice hearing real strings as well coming into a big kind of techno driven, very synth oriented thing, because there's just a resonance in there that cuts through. But yeah, lots of things don't age well, as we've just seen with the MTV side of things. I'm not a massive fan of that Polysix sound, I have to say. It sounds it was
brittle. Less impressive than I remembered. Yeah, I must admit. Interesting. You must have a Polysix, and you're a Polysix fan, aren't you?
I love the Polysix. I love the fact that it kind of it's much more kind of pointy than the Juno, which is maybe the equivalent, being 6 voice and all that. I love the Polysix. It's a really, really good synth. And yeah, regarding things that I think that our memory tricks us, because a lot of stuff that I've like what you described, Nick, is in my memory, things are a lot more distinct, or more sort of, even like stuff like Tangerine Dream and stuff like that, which is electronic. There's a lot of guitars there and a lot of kind of sloppy timing on the synths and things like that that I now notice, because I remember as a kid when I used to listen to it, it sounded so robotic and so electronic and so kind of cold.
Really,
and this, and
like
now
Gary
it's
Newman,
like
the Gary Newman stuff, isn't it? You listen to that and it's really human. Gary Newman's very human. There must be a poem in there.
Totally, that's another as well as Led Zeppelin. You think. In my mind, it was like heavy rock with like loads of distortions and stuff. And when you hear it now, there's a little bit of overdrive on the guitars, but it's like not so heavy. It sounds much more I think that in retrospect, everything sounds more closer to blues, than eventually. It's all based on that, really. Tangerine Dream and Led Zeppelin, so it's kind of the chord changes and the stuff. But yeah, it's interesting.
There was interesting facts going back to that William Orbit thing. There was a huge, I think that's one of his biggest selling records of all time. And he's done some big stuff, but that was massive.
Yeah,
It topped the, many of those pieces on music in a classical style. I think it was. They topped the classical charts. And everybody got really uptight about it because it wasn't proper classical music. And at the time, I remember, because we were doing mixes as well, and I've just found this. I did a mix, and I don't know how this is going to sound, whether the age. So I did a remix of Carmen, and this is Habanera, Filippo Giordano, and we got the multi-track, and it was all orchestra. I wonder if this is I'm just going to. I need to unmute it. Let me see what it actually is going to sound like. I wonder how it's going to be. Oh yeah, it's not too bad.
Nice.
Man, it was so difficult because there's so many. That's actually not as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Apart from the mix sounds really tinny, but that's my style. But yeah, that whole William Orbit thing was huge. I mean, it was really, it was massive. And I suppose the point of this topic really wasn't for me to be able to post something I did, but it was more the sort of notion that some of these things aren't as you remember, but also other classic kind of big classic electronic, because Zimmer sort of pretty much had, and the Nine Inch Nails guy and the guy he works with, they kind of got that down, haven't they? They pretty much. But before that, it was John Carpenter and that kind of thing. Are there any other particular composers of classic electronica in the soundtrack world that float your boat there, Yoad?
Yes, there's one. I forgot his name, but I'll remember. I don't want to.
Well, shall I come back to you? Let's ask Dom if he's got any other favourites. We could recommendations.
I love Deadmau5. I love Deadmau5's stuff, which is kind of nicked from Bach and Handel, isn't it? I say nicked. I mean, those chord progressions that he uses tend to be very. In fact, the guy that made Serum made Thulu, or however you pronounce it, Cthulu, which takes. Thulu, which takes classical chord progressions from Bach and Handel and some of those organ works, and allows you to kind of slice them up, and you can produce very authentic Deadmau5 sounding tracks by doing it, because effectively that's what he's been using, which is really interesting. So they're not bombastic and tumultuous tunes, but they borrow very much from that kind of classical tradition. I'm personally not a fan of the classical version that comes out 50 years after the massive dance hit or whatever. Actually, Trevor Horn's just done one, I think, from some of his stuff, and you get the kind of classical Ibiza and that stuff, which really turns me off, and I don't know why.
It's like the inverse of Hooked on Classics, because remember, back in the disco days when they just put that dreadful beat and got the orchestra to play at 120 BPM and just did. I'm
sure it sounds amazing, and I'm sure if I was Trevor, I'd do it, because it's rare to get in front of an orchestra these days and be able to record that stuff, and I'm sure it does sound amazing, but I would much prefer an absolutely brilliant classical track to be taken into another dimension rather than the other dimension to being dragged back into a classical track. Do you know what I mean? They're classical for a reason. But no, there's nothing. I mean, it's all more the slightly more laid back stuff. I'm just trying to think. There was some of the early 80s, like Japan stuff, was very much influenced by the piano pieces at the time and things like that.
Sakamoto did quite a lot of good stuff.
Yes, yeah. And I can't think of the name of the piano composer at the time. Again,
that's the name I want to remember.
Michael Nyman?
No, earlier than that. I'll dig it out and I'll check it. But they're almost like lullaby-ish, kind of laid-back, romantic piano ballady type classical pieces, which have been reused and obviously sound great because there's loads of space in them. But there's not so much of the very like that. There's not so much of the bombastic stuff though that I can think of. I mean, it must be great to get in front of a real orchestra and
I can imagine. I've never experienced that. I mean, I don't think I've ever actually seen an orchestra perform. If I'm remember correctly,
Really?
I must fix that. That does seem a bit
Yeah.
amiss of me. Did the name come to you, Yoad, or is it still?
Yeah,
on the tip of your-
Sakamoto. That's the name
Sakamoto.
I was trying to remember. Yeah, I mean, I worked on an album with Bond, which is a classical quartet, female quartet crossover. It was really, really successful, and I composed a tune for them, which we recorded at Abbey Road with a London Philharmonic Orchestra.
Oh, wow.
And it was an amazing experience. To just the power, and I was just doing some lines. I mean, I did a kind of a classical arrangement for it, but stepping into the room, and they were in there kind of practicing, and so they didn't know, they had the score in front of them, and they didn't know the BPM. It was quite fast. It was quite kind of trancey with a big orchestra and violin, like mad violin solos and stuff like that. But they played it just kind of mellow and slow, and it was an amazing experience to step into the room and to like hearing something that I composed played by 80 people.
Wow.
It was it's such a powerful I mean, that was the first time that I've done it a few times since, not an instrumental composition as such, but arrangements on songs that I produced, and it's a great
I'll bet.
yeah, with as much detune and stuff and wavetable and chorusing and stuff that you can do to a synth, there's something about the grit of the bows on the strings when it's multiplied by there's a very
Well, it's the chaotic nature of all of everybody's slightly different cadences, isn't it? That's the sort of beauty of it, I suppose.
Yeah, it's such a complex waveform if you want to look at it like that. But the sound is just it's the most stereo that you can have. It's the most lush that you can have. It's the most kind of frequency rich in every sense. It's beautiful.
I actually met Ryuichi Sakamoto once. When we were first starting out I'd probably told this story before. I was starting out in the business, and we'd just done Tom's Diner, and we went to New York to work with Suzanne Vega, and we were in a flat working on these on a follow-up. And we were being, because we were sort of quite hot property, we were being constantly bombarded with, can you meet so-and-so, you meet so-and-so. And Sakamoto was in town in New York, and he had a really LA sort of kind of, car salesman kind of agent and he would not leave us alone. And I was really nervous and frail at that time. I wasn't really up to kind of big power meetings, and my partner had to go out to dinner with Ryuichi Sakamoto, and he knows nothing about music, and Sakamoto wanted to talk a little bit about sounds that we'd got, which was absolutely, I wish I'd gone, I was a fool. And Suzanne was saying, oh, for God's sake, don't bring them back here, we're not ready. So she was like in her joggers and just kind of cooking spaghetti and stuff. And my partner Neil, he found it so traumatic that the only thing he could do is go, yeah, come back. And they came back to Suzanne's flat. She was absolutely livid, but he gave us all these little gifts, and I've still got it. I've got this box, and it was the theme of The Sheltering Sky at the time. It was a beautiful theme, very stringy, and it was like a box set with all sorts of little rice and paper and stuff. It was a very beautiful thing. Anyway, I met him and we said hello, and it was one of the most excruciatingly awkward social situations I've ever been in. But that's the end of the story. Okay, I think it's time we'll break that up with a word from our friends over at Isotope.
Isotope Producers Club is a one-of-a-kind membership for producers ready to take their tracks to the next level. Once you join, you'll gain access to powerhouse Isotope plugins and a curated selection of tools from our partners, such as Melodyne from Celemony. Plus, as long as you're a member, you'll get every future update to the iZotope plugins in your membership for no extra cost. We'll also regularly serve you new curated content like exclusive inspiration-sparking sample packs and preset packs, and industry-leading training ranging from our own tutorials to vocal production lessons from the world-renowned Berklee Online, taught by Grammy-winning producer and engineer Prince Charles Alexander. With new content being added every month full of valuable production techniques, tips and tricks, and solutions to common production problems, becoming a member is an investment in your career that grows as you and your career do. For more information on iZotope Producers Club, head to iZotope.com.
Yeah, and of course, if you're interested in saving money, you can also go over to iZotope.com/SonicTalk and use the code Sonic10 at checkout, where you can save 10% on all their bundles and software and whatnot. You can't do it on the hardware products or on the subscriptions, but if you want to do that, we thank them very much for supporting the show. Hey, it's only Cooker in the YouTube chat. Nice to see you, mate. I haven't seen him for ages. Maybe we'll get to see him in person in Superbooth one day. Because we're planning on going, we're booking, we're trying to thread our way through the booking of hotels and flights that are all refundable in case we can't go. But nice to see you anyway. So, yeah, I think have we got any more topics? I'm just trying to remember. Oh, yeah, but there was this I was rather jokingly saying we sort of need a Behringer section because there are so many stories this week that seem to be coming up. There's a bunch of them. Behringer news. So the first bit of Behringer news was Tom Oberheim gets his name back. Obviously, there was an awful mess where he ended up with only the rights in America, but then Music Tribe owned it in other countries. They've actually now given it back to him, and I don't know if it was necessarily under legal pressure, actually, and I'm just trying to see what it says. Tom Oberheim says, thanks to Uli and the team at Music Tribe and Behringer, I own the worldwide rights to his name for the first time in 1985, since 1985, which is great. Uli, a statement from Behringer. Tom Oberheim is a pioneer of analog synthesizers, and our whole industry owes him a debt of gratitude for his innovations. When we learned that Tom was still interested in making his own products with his original name, we knew the right thing to do was transfer it all of our Oberheim registrations back to him, which is... It sounds lovely, isn't it? It's a slightly different story to the way I remember it, but nonetheless, it's good news, and great to see. As Tom is in his, is getting towards his dotage, even though he's still making products. It's nice to see that fabulous logo. I think actually, who's the name of the? I've forgotten his name. Alessandro Cortini's got a tattoo of that on his wrist, which I think is very cool. But that's kind of, a good news story, something nice for the summer.
Yeah.
Eh?
Yeah, and they're all friends, and it's all good, and I don't care about what anyone thinks, whether it's positive or negative, or they're lying or whatever.
It's good news.
It's a good thing, and I really hope some new stuff does come out as well. And it's it's really, really good news. So that's an excellent situation, and I think there's other similar stories, isn't there? That just come out. Is it the Auratone?
There is the Auratone. There's also the Auratone. We'll do the
Christmas.
We'll do the copyright ones first, shall we? Do the trademark section first. Let me post the link to this in the chat so people can read that for themselves over on CDM. And then the next one is Auratone. There's a terrible story, really. This is the family, the guy in charge, Jack Wilson. He passed away in 2005, age 84, and he basically sort of forgot to renew the trademark, and Music Tribe sort of nabbed it and started making products, but now it's been ruled that the family get the trademark back. At least it sort of puts it back in the situation where they get it back in America and other places. And Auratone, a classic. I don't know, Auratones, they were in every studio. Do they still have a place in yours? In every studio. Or do you have something else that you use now?
I used to use the N-stands back in the day, and Auratones, of course. I hated them, but they're very true. And you can always get the essence of the song, and if you get it right on them and everything that everyone says, all the things that everyone says. These days, it's even N-stands are not really adequate for mixing without a sub, which makes them a totally different beast. I used to know them very, very well, and I did a lot of stuff on them. Checking it with the Auratones was always
Disappointing.
Kind of, you never wanted to do it because it's no matter what you do, even if the mix sounds great, it's not very pleasant to listen to it. You know what I mean? It's like but you can get like to do your vocal rides and guitar solo levels and stuff like that. They're great because what you get is what you get. And I used to like listening through the Ampex
the speaker on the tape machine
speakers.
Yeah.
I really that was kind of beefy and punchy. I have on the studio here. I have a speaker too, but I don't really like the way it sounds because it's on the side, so it's in the rack. But the Ampex had a speaker right there. So yeah, shitbox is something that is quite important, I guess.
Well, I suppose I should point out, if people don't know, Auratone's basically cornered the market on crappy speakers to check your mix on. So literally it's that. So it's got no tweeter, it's a full range, allegedly it's not, it's a strict bandwidth limited speaker, a little crappy box that you could check your mixes on, that every studio used to have as a sort of, okay, we'll just make sure that the vocal isn't 20 dB too loud or whatever it is. But it's a very difficult, I mean, if you were to judge a mix on it and make mix decisions, it's very difficult to use.
Yeah, but try to imagine checking like a hip hop mix on it or something like that, or something with an 8.
No bass.
It's it's just not. It's one stage above your phone, I guess, but they didn't sound as good as the speakers on the 13-inch MacBook Pro. These are amazing.
Yeah,
these are absolutely. They're so good from such a small kind of.
Well, actually, you should try. I've got the 24-inch iMac here, which the speakers on that are astonishing. I mean, there's 6 in there, and literally the thing I was talking about this pre-show. It's like a centimetre thick, and when you press the button to start the thing up, it just sort of goes boom, and it sort of sounds like it sounds bigger. And I've got a Mactopus down here, and that doesn't sound as big. You know, the iMac sounds bigger. It's crazy. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have any?
I have 2 Auratones here. Yeah,
oh,
actually.
Do you?
Still. So hang on. I've got a. Let me just see. There you go.
Oh, bless you.
There you are. And there's one over the other side as well, over here, because I have 2. And I don't know. I just got used to them really. They originally were kind of justified because of AM radio. So people were trying to do mixing for AM radio before FM came about, and it was supposedly, it sounds like an AM radio. And they probably do, to be honest. They have a single speaker inside, so they're literally sourced from one, whereas if you've got near fields with tweeters and woofers, sometimes it can sound a bit weird because the treble comes from outside, outside the range of the center. And they sound awful, but what I find them really good for, and Yoad touched on it, is vocal levels. So I often just get one and sit it in the middle and put it in mixing mono and turn it right down really quietly, and then I'll just put the vocal levels right. Yeah, it's absolutely pointless if you want to do bass and get the mix sounding good on everything else, and then just touch it up like that for pop on vocal levels, definitely. And I find them very unfatiguing as well. So if I'm just fiddling around doing stuff where I don't really care about the sonic quality, I might go through some sounds or just fiddling about stuff, I might just put them on quietly and they're just there and I'm just kind of used to them. But yeah, I think it's probably more of a reminiscence thing, but I do find a use for them. I am still looking for a decent boombox though, which I just want to just wire up as a set of monitoring speakers. And I do exactly what Yoad does. I just listen on a phone. I route it to my phone now because that's what most of everyone else is going to be listening to. But the history in me says, there's a value for it. To be honest, I could just get away with one. If I just had one in the middle and it wasn't in the way of the monitors and stuff, I would just use that just to purely judge levels and stuff. And just to go back to this reason, the brand name is back with the family, which is brilliant. And I was having this chat actually with Ty and a couple of other people on Facebook about, why would you need an Auratone? And you probably wouldn't, but it's also a brand. They might want to put something else out. That Auratone brand is still very strong. And if it's
difficult though, isn't it? When your brand is known for really crap speakers. It's like, where can you go?
In the music industry, surely. I mean, t-shirts is the obvious thing I'd be putting out if I was Auratone, and merch. But honestly, they were. I'm pretty sure it was the AM radio. And AM radio does sound. I hesitate to say it sounds bad, but it sounds different, and they do a good impression of it. If you're mixing for Radio Luxembourg or 206,
who is?
do you know what I mean? You know, exactly.
Real
Back then,
audio.
that's what you would put it on. Yeah,
if you're
quite.
mixing for real audio,
Quite.
possibly. Yeah. The codec stuff. I mean, I suppose actually that's an interesting point. Do you because some people, I know that Fraunhofer did some plugins for DAWs which would, so you could monitor through the codec, so you would hear what it would end up sounding like an MP3 rather than have to bounce it and then play it back. Do you use any of that stuff, either of you guys?
I don't know. I don't use, but I would say that in order, just regarding to what Dom says about bouncing stuff and listening on the phone, you can use Listen To by Audio Movers.
Yeah.
And then you can stream it straight to your phone and other people, whoever you send the link to, and I use that a lot.
That's an interesting idea. I mean, I suppose in many ways it's sort of a similar. It's like a kind of a method that perhaps it wasn't intended for, but actually could. Because if you can stream it to devices which have got specific kinds of speakers in, then just check. It's like checking it on different monitors. Yeah, good idea. Yeah, Listen To is great. Actually, I know you had something to do with the inception of that. So yeah, it's very, very useful. Yeah. For those who don't know, Listen To, I think it's listen.2, isn't it? Let me just I think it's listen.2. What it does is it allows, I'll spell it right actually. It allows you to put a plug-in across a bus or the monitor out, and then that gets streamed, and then you give somebody else a URL and they listen to that in their browser, and you can have uncompressed, you can have very low latency, so it's great for mix. I know Chicky uses it for unattended mixing and all sorts of features. It's a very useful thing. Do you use it for unattended mixes? I mean, is that something that you'd use it for?
I try not to, because it's very different. I've been mixing remotely for years, even before COVID. So I've been doing that for like 10 or more years. And it's not the same as having someone in the room. So sure. With mixing remotely, I find it best to send the file and to get written comments, because then I can sit. Obviously, you can speak with a producer, you can talk to the people on the phone or Skype, but to work like that, I really don't like it, because it's really hard unless you all wear headphones. So if you have the speakers on and you want to talk, then you have to have your mic on, and then they can hear the bleed from your speakers, and you hear the bleed because they're blasting it in their studio and they're like really excited. So you have to mute, unmute, and all that. So that's a little bit off-putting. I much rather get the comments in writing, because then I can sit with them in front of me and just tweak the mix.
Well, the other thing about that is it forces the client to think about what they're, rather than just blurt out something that maybe because their head was turned or whatever, they think about it, and it separates it from the subconscious kind of, I think this. You actually go, yeah, do I think this? And then you write it down. I mean, we're the same with video notes. The thing that we use with Vimeo, I upload a video to either clients, or if I've done a review and I want it fact checked, I'll send it to the client, just go, look, can you here's Vimeo, and you could just click here and go, that fact is wrong, and I got a timecode reference, but then then it's thought about, and then I print it out and I've got a list of things to fix, rather than done verbally. It's much harder because you get all the actual references. It makes a lot of sense.
And the other thing I recommend people I've worked with to do is to give it a day. I mean, sometimes the deadlines don't allow for that, but to give it a day, because the comments you may have during the first listen could be, some of them could be not really relevant after you had a day to live with it, and you can think, actually, that wasn't on my original demo or my rough mix. It wasn't just like that, or whatever, the guitar sound or this, but actually maybe it works better with the whole song and things like that. So it's good to give it some time, and then like you said, it forces you to really condense what you want to say into a readable kind of message.
Yeah, absolutely. There is actually another Behringer story, which we'll just pop here, which is the Behringer Pro-16 synthesizer. This is yet another preview of look what we're making. It's not going to be ready for ages, but here it is. So they're making a 16-voice version of the Prophet 5, which is, they say it's going to have original circuitries for all three versions. They had many features, 16 voices, multi-timbrality, LCD display, and presumably an updated processor. They started about 5 years ago, and it's grown into a powerful synth. So this is going to be coming soon. I mean, they're making kind of everything. I mean, it's, you know, the pretty much soon any synth you want is going to be there. But this is more news, and they seem to be releasing kind of pictures of production pictures of circuit boards and stuff. So this is definitely happening. I mean, it's just a little bit obviously with Dave Smith. It's like, here you go, Tom. Here's your stuff back. By the way, Dave, we're just going to have help ourselves to that. Yeah, it's a strange message. It's a difficult
I would
one
just
to
wave a
decipher.
flag. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the business is business, and I just think the software cloners get a really easy ride, and you know,
Fair enough.
really do. There's no profit. You know, if you got to build something out of bits and distribute it, the markup is much lower than making it in software. So I think everyone should be tarred with the same brush. But when it comes to business practices like you know, messing up people's lives with patents and stuff, even though it's business and it wasn't renewed, I think it's a very good thing that they've got them back. So you know, this is good.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I would just wave a flag for some of the. Or point the flag at some of the software manufacturers who've been doing this for years and seem to get, you know, no bad press about it at all, to be honest.
No, that's absolutely a fair point. I think, I suppose the thing, you know, and I've said this all along, it's like, well, I'd just really like to see a Behringer synth, you know, a synth that is, you know, like the DeepMind was. It was like this
Neutron.
It's sort of, you know, it's based on the concept of a Juno. Inspired, but it wasn't. There's nothing like a Juno. But it had so much more.
Yeah.
I just like to see some more of that stuff, because that's
Totally.
sort of. I suppose that's more risky because you're not using an already sort of perceived value. You've got to persuade everybody that it's good, and I don't see why they wouldn't be able to. Did you say that? Because didn't you say you had a DeepMind and you were pleased with it?
I love the DeepMind.
Yeah, it's
I
great,
love that synth. It's really, really good. And, you know, I have a lot of old synths, and the idea of having everything but new and working and perfect and kind of reliable is very tempting. Because all those, you know, Prophet 5, to have it with 16 voices, it's very tempting. But also, I wonder if anyone has tattooed the Behringer logo.
Yeah, let me show you. Hang on a minute. No.
I'm sure that will happen. I don't see why I wouldn't. I mean, the thing about the Behringer logo, and this is very flippant of me, I think I did a load of. If you give it a set of legs and put an eye on it, it looks like a really massive nose that reminded me of these. There was a character. It was in the Pink Panther cartoon version. There was a sort of, if you put a little hat on it, you could make it like a walking nose. Which I did when we were doing some work with Behringer. I did send one off to my line manager to say, "What do you think? I've got some ideas for the new logo," but it didn't pass muster. Never mind. Well, that's sort of good
The
news. I mean,
Neutron
nothing wrong with polysynths. Although Neutron,
I was just going to say that the Neutron isn't based on anything, is it? Because that's classic.
No, that's Monster.
Yeah.
That is
really
a
like
great,
that one.
great synth as well.
But a couple more like that, you know, because it's not. It just sounds great. I think it's just got those really good oscillators in there, you know, and nothing particularly clever about it. But yeah, really, really sounds like a monster. So yeah, more of those. They must have it in them to produce some of their own stuff, surely.
Oh yeah, I mean that's inevitably will be coming as well. I suppose once you build up the capabilities, you can just turn the focus of those engineering teams to kind of more other products. I mean, I hope that's what's going to happen, and that would be, you know, innovation in that, because I mean the innovation seems to be coming in how to do it at the most cost-effective way so that you can bring the price down to the punters, which is not a bad thing. But I mean, it would be nice to see some engineering innovation rather than trying to figure out how other people did it for more expensive, doing it cheaper, but to do something completely different. I mean, they make a lot of VCO, VCA chips and filter chips now. Music Tribe or Behringer owns those, and a lot of smaller manufacturers are using all of that stuff in their own gear.
Yeah.
It's a big enabler. So you're seeing this innovation coming there. In fact, the Neutron has got 3340 chips in it, the ones that version that they make, and I don't know how the hell they get them to sound so good, because
it's brilliant, isn't it?
Those oscillators don't sound like the oscillators in the Jupiters or in the other things that are 3340. They are massive and really beefy. So very, very nice. Anyway, I suppose that's a good way to end, isn't it? That feels like an uplifting topic, that we got a 16 voice poly. I mean, that is a challenge, isn't it? I mean, that's one of the things, isn't it? What people always say, isn't it? Why don't you just make a polysynth? And it's like, because they're really, really hard to make. I suppose that's one thing that, to be fair, that the engineers will be doing, is figuring out how to do it so that it works, because it's not easy to make all of those VCOs in tune at all and stay in tune and calibrated. It's difficult.
And also the headroom, I think, combining those, doesn't it? The Moog 1 that had some issues, that literally it was kind of distorting internally when everything was turned up. I'm guessing this, but I remember there were some issues which were fixed. So literally taking the output of the loudest possible settings of all those oscillators, mixing them together, and that's a high level signal, and still being able to produce lower level signals without loads of hiss and signal to noise coming in. It is a real challenge, and it's twice as challenging as it was with an 8 voice, so it's a big deal.
Even the Super Jupiter, I have the Rev 4, and it really distorts itself when you play certain patches or do certain things, so it can't handle its own,
can't handle itself.
Strength.
Oh, I've got a few titles coming up. It can't handle itself. The Jupiter can't handle it. What was the model number? I'm going to write that one down.
MKS80.
MKS80 can't handle itself. Can't handle. I think that handle itself. I've also got other topics. Speed of transmission, and Gary Numan is very human is another possible title. I quite like that. It's got alliteration. Gary Numan is very human could be the one. Anyway,
we did a jingle for Kent. I've got it actually. Kent Spong, can you tell me what's wrong? We did a thing. So I would just hold up things like So Kent, can you just tell me what's wrong with this? And he'd go, that's a board from a JX8P, and I'd be like, what? So the jingle was, Kent Spong, can you tell me what's wrong?
Excellent. You are basically working towards a local radio station. I think
hospital radio gig.
Hospital radio calls. I bring my own jingles and everything.
Aha!
Folks, it's been great fun as ever. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you to all of our chatties as ever. We have plans with chat. I'm working on behind the scenes with Wagyu. I want to say thank you to him for the effort he's putting in. But those in the IRC and also in Discord and also in YouTube, we're kind of cross spamming the Discord bot is Restream bot is posting everything everywhere, but I'm trying to figure out ways that we can kind of use that to advantage, like things like maybe questions for a panelist, so we might have a 10-minute section where there's 2 questions and they have to come in somewhere and listed and filtered and whatnot. So we're working on all that stuff. We've got plans, but remember, there's no show next week, no live show next week. Well, we will maybe have an interview ready to go, a video at least, but we'll see how that goes. I'm filming that tomorrow. But Yoad, thank you very much for joining us. Are you back straight into mix world, or are you working? Are you measuring angles between speakers today?
I'm doing that between the time that I sent the emails to the producers and the labels and the time that I get the comments.
Right. Okay. So multitasking.
Multitasking, yeah.
Managing your time well. Well, I'm glad to hear that, Yoad. Lovely to have you as ever. Welcome anytime. And also, Mr. Dominic Hawken, aka Mr. Wiggly. Do check him out on YouTube for Sunday streams and more stuff. Thanks for joining us, Dom. Oh, you're muted.
Oh no, I made it all the way through. I say thank you very much indeed. It's been really good fun. Thanks a lot.
You're more than welcome. And I think, I think Wagyu just put a super sticker up. Thanks, mate. That's very
Wagyu's
kind.
A star.
He is. He's already helping enough. It's very kind of him. But thank you. That's going to go towards the one day, the drinks. In fact, maybe if I see you, Yoad, on at the weekend, I could spend some of the drinks fund on a pint at the Eagle for you, which is your local boozer.
That would be nice.
I'll mail you privately about that. Anyway, so that's it for this week. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. Thanks to all of our live listeners. Don't forget, if you like what you see, subscribe to the channel. We've got loads more stuff coming up, including I've got the M1 UHI plugins, which will come up at some point in the future. A bunch of other things too, but now we'll say goodbye, and hopefully you'll be able to see all of our fabulous Patreon supporters being name-checked on the way out. That's it for this week. We'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye now. See you later.